Good afternoon. I'm Gloria Nelson with TUG, and we are so glad to have you join us today for our TUG Connects 365 programming. As you settle in and get ready for the start of today's webinar, allow me a brief introduction for TUG, the usergroup.org, for both our current members and those of you who represent organizations that have not yet joined our online community for for distribution software users. Now, we've all heard the phrase that knowledge is power, and I can say with the utmost of confidence that after today's presentation, you'll be waking up tomorrow with a little more of both. TUG webinars, online forums, and member events facilitate the timely exchange of ideas and information to help you work smarter and with more confidence. And however you want to slice it, that is a powerful combination. If you're currently a member, it pays to get even more involved. And if not, please visit our website to discover why 2,300 heads are better than one to help you be the best at what you do each and every day. Now, before we get started, allow me a few moments to cover some housekeeping information. Buckle up for about 35 minutes of content, and then we will be not only engaging you with regard to polling, so make sure you're tapping your keyboard, as well as we will be holding questions until the very end of the presentation. And we want to make sure that you all get your answers. So drop your questions after you open the Q&A bubble on your toolbar. Make sure that you drop your questions there, because that allows not only everyone to see the question that you've posed, but if they have the same question, they can go ahead and like it. And if we have multiple questions that populate there, it will bubble up to the top. Also, please feel free to open your chat window. And if you see someone online that's a participant that you know that you've missed because we've not been able to convene on a live basis, feel free to go ahead and say hello to them, as well as let us know where you're logging on from. And also, you can go ahead and give any additional feedback with regard if you're currently a user looking to gather a little more information, etc. And we will be monitoring that for questions as well. However, that defaults to panelists only mode. So make sure that you're chatting in the right field. But if you have a question, it'll come directly to us as the presenters and panelists here. So it'll all be monitored. And regarding intellectual property permissions, you are invited to take screenshots of content that's being presented today, as well as grabbing any chat history with full permissions from our kind folks here at PathGuide. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce Keith Lalonde, VP Systems of PathGuide. Keith, it is always a pleasure to see you. Go ahead and take it away.
Thank you very much, Gloria. It's a pleasure to be here today. Thank you for that nice introduction. My name is Keith Lalonde. I'm Vice President of Systems here at PathGuide Technologies. And I'm excited to be here today to talk about our Advanced VMI offering. First, I'd like to tell you just a little bit briefly about ourselves. Here at PathGuide, all we do is supply chain solutions. That includes warehouse management, vendor managed inventory, and also small parcel and LTL shipping. We are located in the Pacific Northwest. It's a great time of the year to be here in the state of Washington, a suburb of Seattle. At PathGuide, with our sole focus being on distribution, we are continually innovating and creating and extending the applications that we bring to market. And our vendor managed inventory solution, our Advanced VMI, is the newest copy of that, or the newest thing that we brought to market. On our agenda for today, the things that I'll talk about, first off, we'll cover the basics of VMI. What is it and why are companies offering it? I'll talk specifically to how our Advanced VMI software works. I'll talk about some of the advantages that users enjoy, the features and benefits that are built into that, and then we'll run through some common scenarios. So first, let's talk about what is VMI. Well, this is Sam. Sam works for his business, Acme. And vendor managed inventory is a practice in which the suppliers of goods are responsible for optimizing the inventory at their customer site. One of my favorite examples of VMI is the potato chip delivery, or the beer person that goes to the grocery store. They are responsible for, making sure that the shelves for the potato chips are stocked, that the product is rotated, and their goal in mind is to make sure that that grocer, has product to sell, not too much. They don't want them to run out, and make sure that the product is rotated and things like that. So it's really providing a service to, our customers that we're offering. So why do people offer VMI? Well, at the end of the day, it's all about, sales and revenues, right? So vendor managed inventory is a service that is being provided, and the goal is to, maintain or increase market share, raise sales, and hopefully make some money along the way. These days, more and more customers continue to, raise their expectations upon distributors like yourselves, and many have come to demand or expect that you will offer VMI. It's also an opportunity, so it's a little bit more than that. So, your customer, they just want to make sure that they don't run out of inventory. They're looking for you as a trusted supplier to help them with that. But in addition to, just, selling more inventory, there's actually additional opportunities that you or your salespeople will have when they offer vendor managed inventory services to customers. And one of those things is just seeing, firsthand, or having an understanding of what additional items that you might not yet be supplying to a customer that your customer is relying on and needing. We'll get into more detail there on why that might be important. But specifically, you'll come across, hopefully, additional opportunities to, sell more items to your customer. And then I'd really like to plant this seed here. VMI, if a customer is demanding it, okay, it's a necessary evil, perhaps, but it's actually, more than that. So if you are supplying items to a manufacturer, for example, helping keep their assembly lines going, chances are they have, the same requirements for their other vendors as well. So in many respects, you're in competition with other suppliers. And so depending on how you implement your VMI program, this is actually a really key opportunity for you to stand out against your competitors, do it a little bit better. All right, let's talk about VMI in general in a little detail. I've got an example to walk through. So on our webinar today, we are all employees of Acme Distribution. That's the company that we're going to work for. And we'll walk through some scenarios. Now, if a company is going to offer VMI, you could just tell customers that you do VMI. And in the industry, most manufacturers and customers like that understand what VMI is. There's an opportunity to actually build a brand around that. And you can do that whether or not you're using our advanced VMI. We'll get into one of the core advantages that we have built into our product is the ability to reinforce that branding so that the user experience is enhanced and built around that. All right, so getting back to us working at Acme, here's Sam, the sales guy. He works for Acme, and he has a customer out there. And let's kind of talk about a real simple idea of doing VMI. So he has a customer, and that customer might have just one site. Maybe it's a smaller fabrication site or whatever. But at that site, there's an area where they want you to keep the shelves stocked. And so at a site, there's an area where we'll have inventory. And whether or not there are physically bins that are holding parts, or if it's just a shelf, the picture that I'd like to draw here is that if you have inventory on the shelf, using our advanced VMI, that inventory, that whole inventory and bins by areas, that's added in there. And our advanced VMI application is going to allow visibility for both Sam to see the inventory levels at his customer sites. But then additionally, should you choose to allow the customer to see access and help manage their own inventory, they'll have that visibility as well. Now that's fairly simplistic, right? What if there was a more elaborate customer? So let's imagine a larger customer. This will be Proline. Maybe they're headquartered in Chicago. They have numerous manufacturing sites. And let's say that there's a site in Houston. And on my diagram here, I've got a couple different areas in Houston. A vending machine. People are probably familiar with that. It houses a bunch of smaller bins, inventory in the bins. Maybe there's another assembly line or a tool room or something like that. It's a set of shelves. It has inventory in it. And then that picture that's listed as bulk haul 2, that looks suspiciously like ABC Manufacturing's kind of default area where inventory is at. Now, the reason that I'm mentioning that is because when it comes to offering VMI, different customers will have different requirements. With ABC Manufacturing, it's not very complex, and it's very easy to manage that person's inventory. If we look at Chicago and Houston and so forth, there's different levels of requirements that might be in play. Something like a vending machine, for example, clearly every time a vending machine dispenses a part, it would be great if you knew that happened, so that not only did you have a real-time reading of what is stocked in that vending machine, but then the ability to automatically trigger replenishment orders, once that vending machine reaches a certain level, that's built in as well. And so the picture that I'm trying to draw there is that whether the customer's requirements are simple or really, really complex on the verge of and including real-time inventory control at a site, our advanced VMI application is going to handle that. Now that's going to include multiple sites, and here in my slide, Proline has a second manufacturing site. It's down in Mexico, and maybe that's RFID based. And for those that are not familiar with the notion of RFID inventory, probably fairly expensive inventory is tagged with little RFID labels, such that as inventory gets removed from a cabinet or taken out of a room, the system will capture the event that the inventory has left and record those types of transactions, so that from the user's experience, they're not having to stop and scan any barcodes or anything like that. So again, the reason I've got these different examples on here is that advanced VMI handles from the very simple to the very, very elaborate. And I'd like to emphasize that just because our product is called advanced VMI, it's advanced in capabilities. It doesn't mean that users have to be advanced users in order to leverage and use this. All right, so how does the premise of this actually work? So hopefully I've painted the picture that we've got some sites and there's some inventory. And if you can just imagine inventory sitting on a shelf, it was probably received at some point and get placed on the shelf. We have inventory on the shelf, and then as the items are physically removed or being consumed, as they're being removed from the shelf, the inventory is clearly going down. And I'll go into a little bit more detail and talk about the different ways that those inventory consumptions, if you will, get recorded by this system. But for the sake of where we're at this point in the presentation, we'll just imagine that inventory on the shelves is getting used. And once inventory is used, we identify it as being used, and there are different ways to do that. The one that I find that most people are familiar with is the notion of cycle count, based recordings of what inventory still remains on the shelf. So if we go back to Sam's going to service one of his customers. He might go to the customer site using an Android device or an iOS device. he might run through and go to an area, go to a bin and scan it, and then take the cycle count of what is remaining on the shelf. And clearly, if we know if Sam knows what used to be there the last time he visited the site, he takes the cycle count today, the inventory levels have changed, we clearly know what the usage has been between those. I'll point out in this specific example that I'm talking about, it's not real time. It's real time as how closely he does a cycle count compared to when somebody has removed a shelf, but it's probably not that real time. But once you've cycle counted it, the inventory levels are updated. And so for those people who are logging into their customer portal or running a report to see what remains, clearly we would know what's there. There are other ways of trapping on or determining that inventory has been taken off the shelf. More real time than cycle counts, but not necessarily real time, is the notion of a recorded consumption. So what's the difference there? Well, cycle count, Sam drives to his customer site. He was there on Friday of last week. It's now Tuesday, and the inventory will be updated as of Tuesday. In a recorded consumption mode, the product has a barcode on it or a tear-off tag, and as someone is removing inventory out of a bin or off a shelf, whatever, they might tear off that tag, drop it in a bin or something, and somebody would come back and at a later point in time, maybe throughout the day, maybe at the end of the shift, first thing tomorrow, whatever, they might go through and then scan those individual barcodes. And then the inventory levels are getting changed as we are scanning the tags. I'm using the word we, or as when Sam is scanning the tags. Whether it's Sam that's actually scanning this, or for those customers who want to have a hand in their own use of the system, their own employees may be responsible for scanning these tags or scanning these barcodes to record those transactions. Clearly, if we're in the process of recording a transaction, auditing that event, that's when that inventory is being removed off the shelf. Again, that's more real time than cycle counting. I've already hinted to and talked about real-time consumption. If I were to go back to that prior slide and that vending machine that was on there, that's a perfect example of real-time inventory control. Now, a person doesn't have to use a vending machine to have that real-time. A person could, have a handheld device, and every time that inventory is being removed from a shelf, they could be scanning that product off of that shelf. Again, this goes all the way back to what are the requirements that your customer is placing on you that determines what mode a person might use to be able to do that. The end result, once we've analyzed the current inventory levels, whether it's because we've cycle counted it and now we're doing an analysis, or because people are scanning the tags and at 8 o'clock at night, an automatic job runs and does this analysis, whether it's automated or manual, the result of this comparison will be orders replenishment orders that get generated to be transmitted somewhere, at least back to yourselves and your SX.e systems to automate that process of reordering. The automatic is really the key here. So that process takes place automatically, and then that order gets sent back to SX.e. Once it's there, the orders are approved unless they're configured to be automatically approved. And then following your standard SX.e rules, those orders are going to drop down to the warehouse. Somebody would go through and pick, pack, and ship, and then send that order on its way, and the truck leaves. And then at that point, it's appropriate to send the customer an advanced ship notice that says, your order's on its way. Now, Gloria, this would be a good time to do that first poll question that we had. Question number 1, advanced VMI can trigger what that the customer can reference when the shipment arrives and is ready to be received into inventory. And the three potential answers are an automatic shipping notice, a replenishment order receipt, or a collaborative replenishment notice. And I'll give you a brief period of time to answer that. All right, the question again was, advanced VMI can trigger what that the customer can reference when the shipment arrives and is ready to be received in. The correct answer was the automatic shipping notice, or the ASN. The replenishment order receipt, just as I suspected, nobody would suggest that one. The collaborative replenishment notice received a vote as well. That ASN is really, really important in this day and age. It's no surprise that consumers experience, whether that consumer is an industrial distributor or a manufacturer with assembly lines, that whole experience that we've come to expect with make it fast, make it easy, make it correct, is well ingrained in us. And that includes that whole notion of thank you for your order's on its way, here's your tracking number, or here's your ASN, so that the customer can reference that. And when that inventory does show up, whether it's the customer that's receiving it themselves or Sam the salesman that is bringing the order with them, that ASN is actually automatically available in advanced VMI for the receiving to be done against about it. All right, let's talk about some of the advantages of our advanced VMI. I talked about this already, but it's the branding of the VMI offering. So it's more than just a name. It is the opportunity to build something around that. Now, why would you do that? Well, you may recall I talked about, setting yourself apart from your competitors and how you do that. And so, building a brand and then, selling that brand, those services that you're selling, I mean, you'd really like to build a lot of excitement around that. And so with advanced VMI, the ability to build that brand and then build that into the customer experience, the customer portals, and so forth, we give you the tools to really leverage that. And I'll go into more detail on that. Reduced account management labor. Well, why is that important? Well, if you're Sam the salesman, you might want to have more time to spend with your customers. So if Sam is routinely going to a customer site and spending hours going through the production facility, taking his counts and things like that, and he has little time to build or extend that relationship he has with the customer, then that customer experience might not be as rich as you would like it to have. However, if Sam can do his job even faster, he can spend more time with the customer, build that stronger relationship, have a better dialogue. He might also be able to visit more customers in a single day, handle a broader customer load. both of those things are a win-win. When it comes to customer relationships, like at PathGuide, we really value ours, right? And so whatever we can do to build and keep that relationship strong, it's important to be able to do that. And someone in Sam's position, would really appreciate that as well. Because when the time comes, you'd really like your customers to rely on you, as much as possible for as much product as you can sell them, so that when the contract is up or when your competitor is trying to steal some of your business, you've got a better, stronger relationship with your customer. Accurately transmitting, orders and inventory information in real time. I talked about it being, automatic. That whole electronic, transmission of inventory really leads to higher accuracy rates. And at the end of the day, you have to have the right item, just in time. Now, this might be a good time for pulling question number 2. All right, bin level management, automated and ad hoc replenishment, and lot and shelf life management are just 3 of the many features in PathGuide's Advanced VMI. I must admit, I think I was off by a slide here. The answers are true, false, and not sure. And I would not blame people if we get not sure at this moment. But I'll go ahead and let people take their guess at this one. All right, the question again was bin level management, automated and ad hoc replenishment, lot and shelf life management are just 3 of the many features in PathGuide's Advanced VMI. I'm impressed. We got a really bright, intuitive group today. 100% of the respondents knew or figured that was true, and it is. And for those people clearly paying attention, I had mentioned way back when I was walking through different scenarios that depending on a customer's requirements, it could be, real time right down to the bin, or it could be really, really generic. So kudos to everyone on the call today that answered that. So some of my favorite features that are in Advanced VMI is the whole master table structure that we've got set up in there. And so for any customer site, it is identified, which vendor is supplying data that's there. And this is a really, really robust item file, if you will, in Advanced VMI. And so for any site that you might have, clearly you would have at least yourself as a vendor for that site. But Advanced VMI is advanced in many of the features. And one of those is to be able to identify items that are potentially being supplied from other vendors. Now, here's why you might want to do that. Let's say that you are offering your VMI services, your program to a customer, and what they need you to manage is an entire storeroom. And maybe you've got a lot of things in there, but maybe there are other items as well. Well, what if you could identify those other items, keep those in the system, provide that level of inventory control as your customers required, so that when you go in, or when Sam goes in and takes that cycle count, if that's how that site is set up, not only is he counting the items that you're selling them, but he's also counting items that they're buying from somebody else. So that when Sam goes to leave, the customer can be, given notification of, hey, here are the things you're low on. Here are the things that we're set to automatically ship to you. And by the way, here are some things that you're low on that you're buying from your other suppliers. So it goes all back to that level of service that you're trying to offer. You're trying to make it really, really easy. Your customer is really turning over that storeroom to you, and you're managing all of these things. Again, even if they're being purchased by somebody else. That's a real high level of service, right? And then additionally, I talked once already about having visibility to those items that somebody's buying from somebody else. And so what if Sam was able to leave and notice, or say to his customer that he's about to leave, he noticed they're really low on these items and they're high movers. There might be an opportunity for Sam to sell some of those to the customer and allow you to steal from your competitors and win more information there. Now, in addition to being able to assign different vendors that are supplying these items, the item master also includes a definition for, on a location or site-by-site basis, if the items are customer owned or consigned inventory, and then automatically handle those items as appropriate. Now, for those that are not familiar, customer owned inventory is inventory that you've already sold to the customer. They own it, it's located on a shelf, and you're simply, keeping track of how many they had and reordering it when it's necessary so that they don't run out. Consigned inventory is inventory that you own, that you're placing on the shelf. Go back to the grocery store and the potato chips that are stocked on the shelf, right? Frito-Lay is owning those, and the grocery store isn't receiving payment until they sell those things. So on an item by item basis, these items are flagged as consigned or customer owned. And when the time comes to reorder those, Advanced VMI is smart enough to know which items do we automatically reorder, which ones do we just turn around and bill the customer for because they are customer-owned inventory that are getting replenishment. Again, it's really some advanced capabilities that are built in there. Oops, I already talked to that. Lot and shelf life management. So, being able to keep track of those items that are on the shelf so they don't run out is fantastic. But what if your customer has a little bit more advanced requirements like shelf life and lot control? Absolutely, Advanced VMI handles that. So items are flagged for lot control, expiration dates, shelf lives, whatever is unique to an item. And this configuration is an item by item basis so that Sam can have visibility as to the shelf life, the product, how much shelf life is left of the items in stock. The customer themselves can see this. They have access to it. And then in those automated rooms, basically the vending machines, Advanced VMI is smart enough to know that if the user is attempting to have some product that is lot controlled, dispensed, and it has a shelf life that goes along with it, to override and dispense the most appropriate product. So if you imagine that vending machine, and maybe you have a popular product, and you've got some of it in A1 and another product in D7 or whatever, and the employee walks up, they swipe their badge, punch in their number, they want the product in A7, they hit the enter key. Advanced VMI will look up that user, make sure that they're authorized user, that they're authorized to dispense that product in A7, and then, whoa, look at that. We actually have some older product in D1 that we want to dispense instead, and it will, turn the corkscrew and dispense the stuff that has the lesser shelf life on it automatically. So when you go back to that service, making sure that not only does the customer not run out, but you're ensuring that the FIFO is enforced, that the shelf life is enforced on that as well. Automated and ad hoc replenishment. So what do I mean by ad hoc? I'll explain that one, since we already talked about automated, which is just where once that analysis is done on current real-time inventory control levels, those items that have dropped below their mins are automatically put on an order. And that could just all happen automatically and seamlessly. Ad hoc is, basically at any point in time. So imagine that the real simple scenario where Sam goes to just his first account that was just real simple. He might go in and take his cycle count. When he's leaving, he might do as an analysis. He might generate a report, drop it off with his customer and say, here's the things you're low on. I'm going to go ahead and order these. Is that fine with you? That's fantastic. But what if you want to make changes to that? Or what if the customer themselves know that they're going to ramp up a production run and they want to just create, for whatever reason, their own order? Or maybe they email Sam and say, hey, I need you to bump up all the product for, assembly line, number 1. At any point in time, for any reason, a user can go in and create, add to, adjust any of those replenishment orders for whatever reason. So anytime you're doing it like that, that's considered ad hoc on that. And the system is going to handle that as well. And then lastly, the customized customer portals. So I talked about Sam having visibility to all this customer's inventory. The customers themselves can have access to their own inventory. You control how this works and what it looks like. And those portals, they're web-based. Those portals are customizable. So if Sam has 2 different customers that have different requirements for what's important to them, when they log in, they will see whatever is most important to them, and that ability for you to meet those requirements is built in there. And then bin level management is elaborate or as simple as the customer requires is built in there as well. All right, what are the benefits of the advanced VMI? Well, first off, it's fast. I talked about Sam being able to spend more time building relationships or visiting more customers. That's a key part of it. It's really, really easy. Once a customer gets set up, it's pretty much all rules-based, min-maxes, cycle counts for those sites that are defined as cycle counts, or more automated for those that are doing tags or have the vending machines and so forth. And it's pretty darn easy to go through and do those things. Visibility as to what's remaining, what the usages are, and things like that. I've got some sample screens. I'll show those. But having visibility to whatever is important to you or the customer is built in there. It's just air-free and accurate, right? Go in, set up a site, define the items that are going to be stocked there, the bin or bins that those are in, and then the electronic nature and the scanning of the barcodes. That results in air-free orders that are getting sent and accurate inventory levels. Most importantly, Sam and his salesmen and your salesmen are going to love it. All right, this might be a good time for polling question number 3. All right, question number 3. Advanced VMI creates an automatic replenishment order when a customer begins to run low on inventory. What does a vendor receive? The vendor receives a consignment order. The vendor receives an order electronically. The vendor receives an invoice. I'll give a few moments for people to go through and submit their answers. All right, this one was a little bit more tricky, not too bad. The question was, Advanced VMI creates an automatic replenishment order when a customer begins to run low on inventory, what does the vendor receive? Just as I thought, everyone pretty much honed in on the most appropriate, and that is the vendor receives an order electronically. I thought there was a chance that people might answer, and I would not fault anyone for talking about receiving an invoice. There are automatic invoicing that's built in that would go to the customer themselves. But good job to everyone answering the question. All right, I'd like to walk through some of the screens and just emphasize a couple of things. So I did talk about branding. And so what we're looking at here would be the customer portal login screen. I've narrowed it down to just the portion that somebody would use to log in. And I would just like to point out that if you do indeed brand and come up with a name for your VMI program, that's actually going to be displayed on the login screen itself. And so that just reinforces the user experience. So if you're, Sam, or if you're in charge of marketing the VMI program, it's nice to be able to see that whatever branding you've put into is reflected in the user experience. Now, if we, I've talked a lot about Sam. I'll introduce John. John's the customer here. And in our example, John works for Proline, and maybe his job is to make sure that the assembly lines, don't run out of inventory. And so he relies on you to do that, but ultimately, at the end of the day, he's the one that's responsible to make sure that that doesn't happen, that you don't run out. And so if John wants to log in, Sam might grant John access to a portal. He would log in. Here he sees, he'll log in with his user ID and password, and he'll see his own company logo there as well. And so John is interacting with, and he'll see that he is viewing his portal and stuff like that, but he's seeing your messaging along the way as well. Now, as we've logged in, as John has logged into the system, what we're looking at here is just a dashboard that has been set up for John. And so I'll point out that, we had his logo there itself, but here are the items that are being stocked or tracked in a specific area or at a specific site. Here we've got the different items. We've got pictures of the product and descriptions. We've got some usage information. So this might be valuable to Sam or to John. So if they're curious, and here I probably should have scrolled over to the right here to see, but it looks like we have an item that's getting kind of low. Hopefully that's on a replenishment order. And there are areas in the screen to go back and look and see that. But what's most important here is that whatever is most important to John, that he sees that as well when he logs in. And there's some little widgets that allow him to have some shortcuts to some menus. I won't bore the group with an interactive demo to try to hunt and peck around in the application to show you things. But those little widgets, there's a number to choose from. Again, whatever experience needs to be tailored, that's built in there as well. The whole intent here is to make John's experience, a real positive one as well. Now let's shift over and put Sam's hat back on. I won't bore you with the login screen for Sam. It looks suspiciously like the other one itself, but Sam logs in, and Sam, his dashboard is also customizable. It's tailored to Sam's needs. In a large organization, you have many salesmen, each responsible for their own accounts. When they log in, they can see and have direct access to their customers. Different looking portal. Again, this is all customizable. What experience does Sam want? What does he need access to, and so forth. And those shortcuts are all right there. Again, we're trying to make Sam as efficient as possible. All right, at this point, I'd like to walk through some simple scenarios and just talk about those draw a picture for how easy and simple to how elaborate this can be. The most simplest replenishment mode of all is just simply going through and identifying items that are low so that they can be put on a replenishment order and reordered. So I will just emphasize that this is not necessarily cycle counting itself. So in my scenario number 1 here, we've got some bins that we are, that have inventory, and each one is barcoded. And Sam might go through and see that this bin is a little bit low or empty, hopefully not empty if it's a critical item, right? And he might simply scan and say, order this item, order this item, order this item. And these labels that are on that, that's the part number or the customized part number that is the item that's being reordered. And it might also have information on there that might be useful to Sam. These labels, whatever those labeling requirements are, those are customizable too. But in this fashion, Sam shows up, scans those items, hits the done button, and then that order is automatically transmitted back to the main Advanced VMI server where that order can be reviewed. It could also be edited and so forth. But it's pretty darn simple. In that scenario, items are typically set up with fixed replenishment quantities so that when I say I need this item, however that item is configured, reorder a case of 20 each and every time we're reordering it, that's how that item would default. And again, just because it defaults that way doesn't mean that it couldn't be edited. Scenario number 2, I've talked about a couple times, but that's that notion of cycle counting. Going in on that device, saying what site you're at, what area, what bin are you counting, and then identifying an item, identifying the quantity, and moving on to the next item or the next bin to count those things. And as we went through and do those cycle counts, we're updating the inventory. The inventory level is dropping down below what it was before. And at some point, those are going to trigger those items to be automatically reordered or automatically billing for those customer-owned items. For the consigned inventory, where you want to bill the customer as they are consuming it, right? Scenario number 3 was that recorded usage. That's that tag-based consumption. Again, does it have to be a tag? Could it just be a barcode? Well, if the customer is set up so that they've got a device and they're going to scan stuff as they're removing it from the shelf, it doesn't technically have to be a tag. But in practice, these are items that are all just set up. They're on a shelf. The user's going to come up. They're going to take something, tear off that tag, drop it in the bin, and then go on their merry way back to the assembly line, back to their workstation, whatever they're doing with that. And then at some point throughout the day or at a later point in time, somebody's going to have their Android or iOS device, and they'll go through the tags and scan them. That meets the requirements for a lot of production sites and manufacturing sites. Hopefully it's not very windy, the tags don't get lost. But I will emphasize that in a scenario like that, a person is probably not only doing these scanned tagged consumptions, but at some point they're probably going to go back and cycle count to make sure that you didn't lose any tags or somebody didn't forget to tear one off. Scenario number 4, that last one, that's that whole real-time inventory control and replenishment. The vending machine, again, is the best example. A manned tool room or a tool crib where somebody is using that handheld device anytime somebody needs something, that would be another example of this. Again, whatever level of inventory control, whatever level of visibility that a customer needs you to provide, Advanced VMI is going to be able to provide that. And in that fashion, as inventory is being consumed, the inventory level is updated in near real time, right? And so for those customers that need that real time visibility, that's a fantastic way to provide that. All right, those were the examples that I was going to walk through, the scenarios I was going to walk through. We're approaching the end of my presentation. I'll recap what I've talked about today. I've talked about, what VMI is and why are people offering it. I've talked about how our advanced VMI works, some of the features that are built into that, the advantages that we're bringing to the table, the benefits and features of using it, and walk through some common scenarios. So Cheryl, I've reached the end there. This seems like it'd be an appropriate time to field any questions that might have come in. So I'll turn that back over to yourself.
Well, Keith, thank you very much. Gloria here, and I'm going to jump in. We've got a couple questions that have populated, and make sure to add yours to the Q&A bubble. I'll also be monitoring chat. First question that we have is, can the customer access the app?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, this is all about building access to their inventory for whatever requirements that they have. So for those people that the customer themselves want access to it, absolutely, you can grant that.
Keith, I'm going to ask you to slip forward in your presentation to your Q&A slide, if I may, or if you want, you can advance to the end because we've gone over on time and I want to honor that 35-minute time slot. I'm going to ask you one more question so far that's populated, and that is, we have over 25 vending machines at multiple customer locations. Does this software integrate to a pre-existing vending machine?
Yeah, absolutely. So Advanced VMI was built with the latest technology and protocols supported that allows us to communicate with a variety of vending machines out there. And so it's very straightforward to go through and define a new vending machine into the system, the items that are stocked in it, and those people that have those multiple sites like that, multiple vending machines, we can handle those.
And we had one more bubble up. How long does it take to spin up new setup for a distributor? And then how long does it take to spin up new customers for that distributor?
The initial setup is really straightforward. It's just a relatively simple process. Getting you as the customer set up is the hardest part. And it's just identifying, users and which items you're selling to customers and so forth. And then spinning up the customer is probably the easier of the two. So once you have a customer that wants to be spun up, it's simply identifying, what's the name of the location, what the areas and what are the areas called, what bins and which items are stocked there.
Wonderful. That concludes the questions that we have. Keith, if someone wanted to reach out to your company to get in touch to learn more about the VMI product and solution, can you just let us know how to reach you?
Yeah, absolutely. You can send an email to clientservices@pathguide.com, and that gets routed here internally, and somebody will reach out to you promptly.
Wonderful. So again, I'd like to reiterate that is to reach out to clientservices@pathguide.com. And what I'd like to also do is, first of all, thank you so very much, Keith, for joining us today. Always delighted to learn so much about the solutions that our partners have for our in-for distribution, users. So thank you very much. And also a big thank you to everyone who has joined us online today for today's presentation. And we invite you to continue this dialogue directly under the SX.e forum. Also, sometimes people pop over into AIM, WMS, and Keith will be monitoring that along with his peers at PathGuide for any answers that they can bring you. We'd also like to invite those of you who are members to, keep that chatter going and look in your inboxes as well for next Tuesday's webinar on the 20th at 2 p.m. Eastern time, as our e-commerce partners join us for a sponsor showcase. That should be very exciting. So watch your inbox for the invitation, and our website always has upcoming webinar content on it that will link you directly to the registration page as well. So, hold on. One more question here. To provide custom flat file options for ERPs to receive orders. It looks more like a statement than a question. Oh, do you provide custom flat file options for ERPs to receive orders?
Yes, absolutely. I'll make this brief. I talked about the ability to determine a replenishment order, launch it into SX.e, but what about other formats? Absolutely, flat files are generated. So if you imagine that storeroom where there's more than one vendor that has items there, the ability for you to provide to your customer a file format that is useful to them or useful to the other vendor is built in there as well.
Well, Jonathan, thanks for that great question. Glad that I saw that pop up into my field of vision. If you have any other questions, also please feel free to make sure that you avail that address that Keith provided for you. And also, I'd like to just say in closing, for those of you who are not yet members and can't access that chatter that goes on within our very robust forum discussions, please visit www.theusergroup.org and join today. I always say, why haven't you thus far? And so again, thanks for joining us. Keith, thanks again. And also, as they say in Hollywood, folks, that's a wrap.